girls out there in TV land, in radio land, whatever you call it. Welcome to Simon Chardiet's New York Stories. And I'm just doing a little rehearsing. I'm getting ready for Saturday. Simon and JJ at Otto's Shrunken Head. And it's going to be a matinee show. It's going to be like 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock. Me and JJ, we're just going to blast out some rock and roll tunes off of this list. And what I've been up to lately with music, I played Saturday with the Done Wrongs, and the Done Wrongs is me and JJ, right? Me on guitar, JJ on drums, but Laura Rebel Angel on upright bass and singing, and then Chucky, aka Raven, on sax. So it's kind of like sleaze rock and roll all-star band, and we're just doing it as, like the hipsters say, like a pop-up. So we've done a couple of gigs. We got one more gig coming, and then the next day I played some straight ahead jazz. I did my jazz thing, and at this restaurant gig. So and now coming up this Saturday, December 11th, 4 to 6, Simon and JJ at Otto's Shrunken Head, 538 East 14th Street. So that's what I've been up to. And as always, any tips I get in here go into making the next record. It's going to be another Simon and JJ / Ball Breaking Pricks split record. It's going to have everything on it, man. Rockabilly, outlaw country, Bo Diddley, and like New York City punk rock all on one record. And I just put another jazz record out too, where I did a dedication to Django Reinhardt, and I did some Django style music. Of course, Django really had technique, and he was a fast player. And I'm not a very proficient or slick player, so I just kind of try to just play my homage to Django, but not really copy him. I can't copy. Nobody can copy Django. He was the best ever, never been beat. And now let's get right down to it, okay? Let's get down right to it. And oh, I forgot to take my flag down. Yes, I am an anti-fascist. I don't like Hitler. I don't like Stalin. I don't like Mussolini. And if you do, God help you. Maybe you hang around long enough here, you might repent. All right, but okay. So getting right down to it, Bke Messenger, New York. All right. If you know me, I'm not that suited for much else than playing music, surfing, riding a bike. I'm pretty good at manual labor, any kind of heavy manual labor I'm okay at, but I'm not really like one of these people like nowadays that could do all these things. So I got to where back in the old Eddie D orchestra days, I ran into this guy Ducey, Dennis Tinling, and he was working as a bike messenger, and he worked for this company, Coleman Younger, and I was like, wow, man. I said, that sounds like kind of fun. That sounds like something I could do. And a couple of years later, I kind of needed to make a few bucks. And so I knew a guy that was a foot messenger. And I tried that, but they fired me after a couple of hours because it was raining cats and dogs. I got soaked to the skin. I was freezing. I think I delivered like 2 packages, and I was so stupid. I didn't bring an umbrella or a raincoat or nothing. I was just out there in this pouring rain. So they fired me because I was like shivering and cold, and they tied the can to me. So it's when my father was still alive, I saw my father. I told him what happened, and he said to me, "Mercury." So I tried again. I worked for mobile messengers for a while, and Then I worked for US Litho, and then later on when I got clean, I worked for a whole bunch of different places. I worked for that guy Gregory, and then I worked for like FTF, Fast Things First. I was Johnny One Eye, and I worked for this place Mach 1, where that's where I met Mike Dolan, who was in a whole bunch of bands too. And so anyway, the whole thing with Bke Messenger back in the old days was, New York, like, you really had to watch it. We were loading into a gig the other night and carrying the amps in, and I couldn't hardly help but reflect, like, yeah, I'm on this side of the truck unloading amps, and while I'm on this side of the truck, in the old days, some crackhead or junkie or professional thief would come around the other side of the van and just rob shit and run down the street. Like, you had to watch all degrees of everything, So New York back then was like, if you didn't have your glims on something like that, it was gone. So we didn't ride really good bikes. We tended to ride, like, go to the Thieves Market on St. Mark's Place and Second Avenue and buy a $15, $20 crackhead bike. And then you would get a flat like every day. So what we would do is we would take Clorox bottles, cut them into strips, and then sandpaper them so they were all smooth and put them between the tire and the inner tube, because we were using those $6 or $7 cheap tires, the gum walls. And we would just get any kind of beater bikes. They were usually like Schwinn's or 3-speeds, right? Bikes like that. And use those, because, I mean, if you had a really nice bike, if you had a Bianchi, a Pinarello, a Frigis, I used to use this French bike, a Peugeot, but it had and what I found is I would break everything on the bike. The derailleurs would just pack it in, the brakes would stop working. I was riding cheap bikes. They got steel rims, so when it starts raining, the brakes don't work anymore. So you go right back into the back of a truck and bust your fucking face in and shit. So it was like, we had to try to, it's more about that later, but the whole way that racket worked was, back then, you got like, they charged the client like $2 or $3 a run, and you got 45% of it. So like, you're only making like $1 something a delivery. So you got to do a lot of deliveries. It's piecework. But if the dispatcher doesn't know you or doesn't like you, or if you're not greasing him off, a lot of guys used to deal weed or other drugs and grease off the dispatcher with drugs and cash to get more runs. But I was never that sophisticated. So anyway, I was never that, fucking sophisticated. So you might only make like $10, $15 a day. It was super low fucking pay, right? So we'd be out there in these cheap bikes. Now, the way it works, you deliver your package. Now you have to call the messenger company back in, and you have to, ask them for another run. So the problem with that is you had to have quarters on you. By that time, the phone had gone up to a quarter. It was the early 80s, right? That's where we used to say, like, if somebody was like giving you a fucking hard time, breaking your balls, you used to take a quarter out, kind of say, why don't you take this quarter and call somebody who cares? Because a phone was a quarter, and you went to these phone booths. Now the junkies, right? I should talk, like I should fucking talk, right? So they used to take toilet paper and put it up the return coin slot in the phone. So if your call didn't go through, you wouldn't get your money back. It would get stuck in the toilet paper, and then they would come along. So we used to call the messenger company. They'd be like, mobile, hold. And they'd keep you on hold, keep you on hold, keep you on hold. Then you get back, hey, I need to run, mobile, hold. And then your fucking call would expire, okay? So now maybe you were making $1.50 for schlepping around on the bike, and now you just made it. You're gonna make $1.25 because you just spent change, and you have to have change for the fucking phone. So it was a drag, you know. Uh, it it was a real problem. Sometimes the places would let you use the phone, but usually like you're a dirty, smelly bike messenger. You're on the fucking lowest level of humanity. You know, another issue is the locks, the bike locks they had back then. They only had like those little shitty ass fucking cable locks, right? So, you know, you come out of the place and your bike's gone because people used to follow you. They used to follow you around in the van, and when they saw you were gonna make a delivery, they'd come out of the van, clip your lock, and just put the bike in the van. Sometimes you could buy the same goddamn bike back at the thieves market on St. Mark's later, but so it was complicated. Now, like I said, I ain't really, you know, good for much else, you know. I could play music, I could be a shitty bike messenger. So I was kind of doing it, you know. I mean, what else am I going to do? I deliberately never learned how to type. I deliberately like got kicked out of college for getting fucked up all the time. Like I wanted to make sure that I had no other fucking alternatives in life but this. I wanted to do this. I was going to practice. I was going to learn music. You know, I wasn't going to let anything stop me. And I was like, okay, if I got to ride a bike, at least I'm getting some exercise, right? So, anyway, so it was kind of like I started carrying around a wire hanger, right, that I would shape into a hook. So I'd go around to the phones, and anytime I had to call into mobile or something like that, the first thing I'd do is stick the wire hanger up and pull the toilet paper out. Sometimes there was no toilet paper, but a lot of times there was. So I'd pull it out, and a couple of times I pulled the toilet paper out, and some money came out. I know some guy told me the story. He pulled the toilet paper out and like fucking $15 and change came out. But I never wasn't that lucky. But I did get a few, you know, coins from here doing that, you know. So then they give you another run and you do the other run. The other thing is like New York generally has shitty weather, so you know it starts to rain and go wear like one of those yellow raincoats, but you're just gonna get fucking wet and cold. And the best bikes were any kind of coaster brake bikes because the hand brakes back then, I'm talking like the late 70s, early 80s, you know, you squeeze the fucking brakes, the brakes stop working because it's raining. It's not like aluminum rims where they'll still work. So then we had all those issues back then. And the other issue was like they would just take your bike. So I remember one time there was this all you can eat falafel place. It was the deal was everything you could stuff in one pita was like $3. So I used to take the fucking falafel balls, like compress them till they were like meteorites, you know, like fucking black holes, and stuff everything. And it was run by these Hasidic guys. So I would take falafel, and you could stick French fries in there and pickles and all this shit. And I'd make this Dagwood Bumstead fucking falafel. Man, do I love falafel. And I come out of the joint and my fucking bike's gone. One time I stopped to talk to somebody and the bike was right behind me leaning up on a fucking lamppost. The bike was literally like 2 inches from my ass. I turned around, it was gone. I mean, I want to tell you, you know, you got no idea. Like the minute you was anywhere, there was like beady little eyes watching you, just waiting to get over. You had to have your fucking guard on, you know. So the next thing is some bike messenger stories. I never got hurt that bad on the job. Uh, One time I got hurt was I was doing a run, but I was doing it for myself. I wasn't doing it for the messenger companies. I was taking the entire Joey Miserable and the Worms mailing list, which was we used to make these postcards and we get them printed up and then we cut them into quarters and then we put stamps on them and go to the post office and mail them, and that's how people knew when we were playing. It's not like now where I go on the internet and tell you, hey, I'm playing here, I'm playing there. Back then you had to mail everything out, you know. The media was monopolized back then by the corporate interests. So like if you weren't on a major label or if you weren't like popular. You know, you didn't get into fucking Village Voice, you know, and all those other fucking jerk off rags they had back then. So, anyway, fucking fish wrap newspapers, whatever. So I was doing that and I was riding my bike, but the problem is that I was already pretty drunk. Uh, I had and I swilled like a fucking 32-ounce Ballantine ale, you know, to get primed for going to the post office. And so I rid right into a Con Ed construction ditch. Yeah, I had my 3-speed, right? My Ross 3-speed and my Bke Messenger bag with the whole worms, everything in it, and my shitty little. We used to go to the hardware store and just get those chains and put a padlock on it. You know, via helfen, via toiting bankes. Half the time the junkies would just cut the fucking chain, but that's all we had, right? So I rid right into Con Ed construction ditch, and there was that moment where I was like, you know, airborne going down into it, and I had a little time to ponder my fate before I landed on the bike with the Sturmey Archer 3-speed right here, and it ripped my chest open right through the nipple. So then I looked down and my shirt was ripped open, and I could see 2 halves of my nipple, and the blood started coming out like blop, blop, blop. So I rid the bike, the wheel was all bent. I rid it to the fucking post office in right by where Webster Hall is. We used to call it the Ritz, 4th Avenue, 11th Street. And there's this big line of people. And so I figured, hey, it's everywhere blood. It's the summer, right? So I'm just wearing like a cut-off t-shirt. I'm covered in blood. It's dripping on my fucking feet. So I just go to the front line. It's right at the height of the AIDS panic, too. And I'm bleeding all over the place. So, like, you know, like nobody wanted to fucking challenge me, you know, about me just fucking flam doodling the fucking line. So I go to the front of that shit and I don't feel so good. I'm starting to get dizzy. I feel kind of cold and it's like, you know, 100 degrees out. And I got the Worms mailing list out because, you know, we got to put asses in the seats, motherfucker. We got to fucking get people to the show. So then I go back to Ludlow Street, and where me and my kid's mom lived. It was right next door to Katz's Deli. So it's the fucking summer, and they put all the fat and all the meat trimmings and the chazirai, they put it into these cardboard things, and it's out on the curb. So it's 100 degrees out, so all the flies come. So I go home. I don't feel so good. I feel like real dizzy, and I lie down on the floor. I couldn't even make it into bed. I wake up. I hear screaming and screeching, and my ex-wife, God bless her, she knew what to do. She put ice on my balls. I had like ice on my balls, and she's smacking me in the face. Bang, bang, and she's like, "Oh, wake up, wake up! Oh my God, you gotta go to the hospital." And I wake up and I'm in a pool of blood. I feel really fucking watery, and I'm covered in flies. They're crawling. It's like I hear like, and I have flies crawling in and out of my tit, which is half cut off, you know, my. And so I go, get me a fucking beer. So she gets me another Ballantine, and I swill that. And we get on the bus, and we go into Bellevue, and the nurse comes out. Oh my God, did he get shot? Did he get shot? So my kid's mom, she goes, yes. So she knew what this is a good thing, right? Smart. So they took me right away, and they had to give me all these blood transfusions and shit. I lost like 1/3 of the blood in my body. They said if you lost any more blood, you would go into cardiac arrest and die. I think I was like 23 or 24 or something, but it's one of the times I got pretty close to buying the farm, man. So that's the only time I ever got really hurt. The other time I got hurt, also I wasn't working. Somebody gave me this little bullshit Stingray lowrider bike, right? One of those little crappy ones you get on eBay. So I was going to try to sell to a hipster for $30, and I was riding it, and I took one hand off the handlebar and the whole front wheel turned. I went over the falls and I fucking sprained my wrist. And I had to play with the sprained wrist on this hand. A couple of days later, my wrist came back. It was fine. But those are the only two times I ever really got hurt. All the years I was a bike messenger. And then what happened is, once in a while, I used to see these things that would go by like a comet. And it was a legend, these New York City bike messengers that didn't have any brakes on their bike or anything. And people told me about them. And once in a while, they were all guys from the island. They were all like Afro Caribbean guys, or guys from like the islands, and you'd see these guys going by on these bikes with no brakes and no freewheel. So it was one gear, it was a constant. That's what they call it down in the islands, down on like Trinidad and Barbados. They call that bike a constant. And these guys would fly by. And one time I saw this guy riding by with one leg, and he's riding a constant. Now they call them fixies. We call them fix. I would never call it a fixie. That's like some fucking rookie bullshit, man. If you call it a fix or a track bike or a constant, if you call it a fixie, you just show me you were never on a fucking job, you rookie. So these guys just go flying past me like I was standing still, and I was like, wow, I want to be one of those guys. So then I was working for Johnny One Eye, and he's one of the guys that got me into surfing, because if the waves were good, he would just ditch out of work and he would leave some kid to dispatch. And I asked him about it. I said, where are you going? Rockaway. And I was like, isn't the water really dirty there? And he was like, it ain't no dirtier than nowhere else. And he would go out there in his truck to Rockaway. So I was like, wow, I always wanted to be a surfer. And then I did some bike messengering shit that it wasn't strictly legal, no how. I was doing, delivering things that now they're legal. Now every schmuck and their Uncle Pete are delivering this shit. But back then, it wasn't that safe. It wasn't legal. So you could get popped or you could get blown up. If you're carrying like a whole bunch of fucking weed and like $2,500 on you, there's people that would just shoot you in the fucking face and take your shit. Line forms to the right, especially back then. So you knew you were under danger. You had 12 on one side of you, and you had the stick-up kids on the other side of you. So you had to really, you know? And my reputation was I could take a beating off the cops and not talk. So I got the job. I did that for a while, but I got out of it, and I got out of that job. And then I got into this. I worked for a bunch of these places, Mobile, Breakaway. We used to call them Take Your Pay. They were kind of dicks. Then I started working for this other weed guy, and I called him the Finger because I was working for him, and he was usually by the end of my shift. The pay was really good. I had a track bike by this time, and what happened is my road bike had gotten stolen. One of my surfer buddies sold me a track bike cheap, so I took it for a couple of spins around the block, and I figured it out in about 5 minutes. I'm like, okay, I'm riding track bike now. So I started riding track, and I ran into this guy, and I went to this punk rock bar where all the punk rockers and bike messengers hung out, and this guy just looked at me. I used to see him slumped over the bar, and that's the most depressed looking person I've ever seen in my life. He just looks so depressed always. He was slumped over the bar, and he looks at me, hey, you ride track? I go, yeah. He goes, you want a job? I go, hell yeah. And he goes like this, he goes, you know what I'm talking about, right? It's not legal. I say, yeah, fuck the law. I'm down, man. So I was making pretty decent money. I went from being out in the fucking street all day, like on the balls of my ass, making $30, $50 to making like, $200 a day back in the 90s working for this guy. But what happened is that by the end of the night, he'd just be so far, he'd be shit roaring drunk by the end of the night, right? So he'd be slurring his words. You could hear the bar noises in the back. So on Valentine's Day, here's what happened. I got a phone call from the other dispatcher, okay? The guy that was a little less difficult to deal with. And he told me, "You heard what happened to our boy?" I go, "No." He goes, "He cut off the fuck you finger on his left hand. He cut the finger off and he put it in a heart-shaped candy box. And he had one of his one of our messengers, one of our guys, deliver it to his ex-girlfriend at a job. She was a fucking hairdresser. So this messenger rides up and delivers to her a box. She opens the box and there's this chopped off fuck you finger in it on Valentine's Day. So she called the cops. So the cops raided the guy. But this guy, I want to tell you something. This guy was good at he was good at security. So they never found no weed or nothing. They raided him for the finger. That's why I always called him the finger. So another thing we did is we had this bike. This is my last story. This is about 20 some odd years ago. It was right after 9/11. We had this, I participated in this, and it was called a fun ride, which it kind of was. It wasn't really like a knockdown, drag out race like some of the bike racing I used to do, like Monster Track or the 666 race, where I'm happy I came in ninth. It was 53 fucking miles of riding in the fucking street in traffic, and you had, and I came in ninth. I've always been happy about just coming in ninth because I was already in my 40s when I was in that fucking race. But this was like a fun ride. It was kind of like a rally. Like you had all these checkpoints and everything, and it was from the Mount Eden Park, 170th Street to Coney Island, and it was at night, and that was a fucking great event. That was a great. My daughter rid in it too with her, and she was on a different team, so we had all these teams, right? And this is still back in the old politically incorrect days, you know. But it was called the Warriors. But the morning of the Warriors, it was a big hurricane swell. So I'm surfing and I'm out there with Crazy Bert, the guy that also got me into open ocean swimming. And me and Crazy Bert are surfing, and it's like, you know, head high, big for East Coast. And this guy comes in on this boat, this like cabin cruiser fucking boat, right? He comes in and he's like, now he's coming in too close to shore. I think he was trying to talk to some girl. It's the middle of the summer, so everybody's on the beach. There was no surfing beach back then, so people are swimming on the inside, and then we're surfing on the outside, same fucking beach. So me and Bert are surfing, we're grabbing a few waves, and we're talking about how we're going to ride the Warriors that night and just like not sleep, not rest, just go straight there and fucking, you know, just blast it. So this boat comes in, and I'm like, "Yar, skipper. Yar, skipper, you're too far inside." And the guy comes inside, and it's a long period groundswell, so the ocean's going to go relatively flat. And then about every 10 minutes, these big fucking waves are going to come in, like 5 waves, 7 waves, and then the ocean's going to go flat again, right? So he's inside, and I was like, "Bert, this guy's inside the fucking break zone, man. He's inside the drop zone." And then he's beam onto the swell. And I'm like, "Yar, skipper, the swell's abaft your beam, matey." And he's sitting there and he's trying to talk to some girl swimming or something. And now here it comes, the set. And he's right under the fucking lip of this like fucking 6-foot closeout. The lip just fucking breaks right into his boat, like boom. And his boat gets born. He's broached. His fucking beam onto the swell. So I mean, what a shitty fucking skipper. I don't even like boats. I hate boats. I don't want to go on a fucking boat, all right? But like, it's like, Ocean 101, right? Avast, ye lubbers. So the fucking wave blasts into his boat. The boat goes right into the wooden piers we have here at Rockaway, and you could just hear crunch and fiberglass snap. And I'm like, yar, a fine skipper, yar. And then me and Bert, we rid the subway to 59th Street, and we met a whole bunch of other messengers. We rid up to the Bronx, and then we did this whole fucking fun ride like all night till the next day, riding to Coney Island. And I know the Bronx real good. I know all 5 fucking boroughs. You could put me anywhere in the 5 boroughs of New York City, and I know where I'm at. And I know how to get the fuck out of there, because I have been in this goddamn city my whole fucking life. If there's one thing I know, it's New York City. All right. So I was the Pathfinder. So I was riding lead because I know the Bronx. And we're going across those bridges over the river from the Bronx, Manhattan into Harlem, and it's raining. So all the fucking oil and grease that comes out of the car, it goes on that metal deck. And when it rains, it's so slick, it's like riding on ice. So I was like, guys, this is going to be real slippery. So we're all riding barely over a track stand, like just faster than a track stand. I said, all you got to do is just stay up. Just don't try to fucking hit it. We're riding really slow like this. And the German team sees us and they think we're rookies or something. They're going to try to take us on the bridge. And the guy's got a whistle, he blows sprint, and they start sprinting up the concrete ramp onto this metal deck bridge. And people flew from all over the world to be in this ride. So they think they're going to take us. And I was like, oh shit. And you've never seen like 20 motherfuckers pile up onto basically like a metal cheese grater. They were doing 40 miles an hour when they hit that shit. I seen them at the next checkpoint and they were all bandaged and bleeding and fucking taped up and shit. They kept riding too. And our team captain, our team captain, he was the captain. He's the guy that organized the team. I was the Pathfinder, right? In the OBs. Because these cats knew Manhattan, but I knew the OBs, right? So he was so drunk, we did sprint. We're trying to beat this other team, and we're going down 9th Avenue in traffic at like 30, 40 miles an hour on fucking bikes with no brakes. And the captain, he's so drunk, he just comes across all the lanes into us, and he takes his own fucking team out, like all of us. Like, boom, like I'm doing 35 miles an hour down 9th Avenue on my ass, like boom. But I didn't get hurt. I was a little sore. My bike was okay. So we just got back on the bikes and kept riding, except one guy fucking crashed into a car. And then the guy got out of the car and wanted to kick his ass. And we were a little stunned, but we got back on our bikes and we kept riding. So those are my last Bke Messenger story is this guy's riding on my ass and he's in a Porsche with Connecticut plates. So it's like strike 1 Porsche, strike 2 Connecticut plates, fuck you. So the combination of the two, I mean, you know. And he's honk, 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 honk. And I'm like, fuck you. You know. So he starts following me down 14th Street. So I decide to fuck with him a little bit. And he's blowing his horn at me, blowing his horn. And his bumper's right on the wheel of my bike. And I just done my last run. I'm going back to Streetwise. To like just pick up my little travel guitar and I want to go home. And he's riding my wheel and riding my wheel. And I'm like, what's your fucking problem? So he gets out of his Porsche, and I'm like, who do you fucking think? You think you're a fucking wise guy? I say to him, and he calls me the F-bomb, you know, like, the F-bomb. I'm like just laughing at him. So he takes off in the Porsche. So I catch him at the next intersection, and I come up, and I punch the driver's side mirror off his car. I just come by, I give it a good shot. The mirror breaks off. And I turn into First Avenue, going the wrong way down First Avenue. This is before bike lanes. I'm going the wrong way. And there's this Chinese cat delivering Chinese food, and he's heading the wrong way at first. And he says to me, now, I'm not making fun of Chinese people. I'm not making fun of this guy's accent. I'm just depicting his Chinese accent because it was so cool. He goes, "Look out, look out. He running right for you. He running right for you." I look and the guy's running after me like, ah! And he left his Porsche in the middle of the intersection, so I cut out. And I went back to Streetwise, and my dispatcher, Fat Dominic, is there. God, may he rest in peace. I loved Fat Dominic. So I go back. I'm like, hey, Dominic, I know I usually just come in on Tuesday and Thursday, but can I work an extra day this week? And Dominic goes, Simon, as far as I'm concerned, you can work here as much as you want. You've got carte de la blanche. So I guess I had carte de la blanche, motherfuckers. Mwah.